So of course, what we can do is I close the scene just so we can, once again, so setting up project, right? So we go File, and we don't create a new project because we already did that, right? That was the first video for the desk. So now we go File, Set Project, right? And there's Project 3, so we just click on the folder. We hit Set, there we go. And that's now the active project. So now if I go File, Open Scene, you'll see that there is the desk. And it's always better to open from File Open. Double clicking on files can sometimes corrupt them. So believe it or not, I know sometimes, just save it wherever you want to. But particularly if you're using projects, you'll end up probably doing it this way anyways. But I've seen in the past that if you just have your files on your desktop and you just double click on them, yeah, it'll launch mine, open the file, but sometimes it corrupts the file. So it's kind of always a little safer to just honestly launch your software, then open your files, right? So, all right, so we'll got the desk selected. We'll hit open. There we go. We of course don't want to save that scene because that's not the scene we're working with. It was just asking us to save the new scene that we didn't want to do any work in. We wanted to open a scene. All right. So now what we want to do is I really want to kind of talk to you guys about, and this will probably be the last video for the day because we really only need this week for the desk and then next week for the clock radio. I really want to be able to show you guys how to kind of set up the cabinetry here for us, right? And talk about stars a little bit. So there's going to kind of be a little bit of a demonstration of what not to do and then what to do, right? And then what we can do is we can make the drawers, do the bevels and kind of handles for our videos for our next class session. So at this point, what we want to do is we want to select the box right here. And in this case, to make my life a little bit easier, although I think it'll be okay now because we're kind of where we're at. So we select this way, right? Remember, hold down right mouse button, object mode, right? Object mode. If you select it anywhere, right? If your cursor's over here and you hold down right mouse button, you go to object mode. And you remember, you can just left click, right? On whatever object you want to work with. In this case, select this guy. I could use isolate select if I wanted to, but I think for right now, I'll leave it alone. I want to see a little bit more for lining up these things. But first and foremost, and actually I think I will use isolate select for the moment because I'm going to show you the wrong way to do it, right? That's kind of why we're just doing this video today. What I'm about to do is not the way to do it. So this part of the video for the next couple of minutes, next maybe 5-10 minutes, just watch me. I am doing it a way that's not terribly good to show you why. And then we'll go back and we'll structure it better. And then, like I said, we'll worry about the drawers and all that stuff on our next videos for our next class. So today it should be pretty easy to get a good start, right? So remember, this little blue kind of dotted box with the white cursor right there, that's isolate select. Remember, it is here. There's a quick key for it, Control-1. And remember, when you click on it, it only shows what you want to work with, right? You click on it, off of it again, it turns it off. So it's kind of, when you click on something that becomes blue, that means it's a toggle. You've turned it on, you can click back on it to turn it off. And it shows everything else again. So remember, it's not deleting anything, it's just letting you see what you want to work with. In this case, if you see here, we have 2 drawers, right? So we're going to need some edge loops in here to allow us to have drawers that we want to extrude. So I'm going to create that. So in this case, I'm not even going to worry about the borders right here. All I really need is to break this into kind of a smaller top drawer and a larger bottom drawer. So we go to multi-cut, right? Go to multi-cut. Remember, the quick key for it's Control-Shift-X. It's just that happens to be the quick key for doing recording stuff in my capture software. So remember, using quick keys certainly used all the time is great. I would recommend using Control-Shift-X, but my capture software makes it a little bit weird for me to use it because it'll do stuff the capture software. So remember, when you have multi-cut on, we saw the other on the room, right? We could slice, right? If we just left-click drag off an object, we can slice and just slices through. We can even just manually go, right? I can just left click, and we can do that stuff, right? But if you hold down Control, right? When you hold down Control on your keyboard, you'll notice it will kind of, whenever you're over an edge, it will try to put in an edge loop perpendicular to that, right? So remember, it's always perpendicular to the edge that you're putting it in on. And it does go all the way through because it's going opposite edge to opposite edge. Remember, it's one of the reasons why we like quads a lot, right? There's many reasons, but that's one of them. Certain tools like adding edge loops work really, really predictable on it. So we'll just Control click. Remember, so Control left click, it puts an edge loop in. And I'll turn multi-cut off. And now we have the faces we want, right? And like I said, don't be following this part, right? This is I'm doing it the bad way, right? So keep that in mind. So what I'm going to do is I've got my edge loops. So now I have 2 drawers. And we saw this on our kind of door, all right? And on our door, I kind of, just did it to show you the tool and all that stuff, but we could have probably structured our door a little more like this, right? But remember, if you extrude, there is these extrude options that come up, right? So it's just extrusion. And remember, we could turn key faces together off. And we can even type in offset. So let's maybe make this 1 initially, maybe 2, right? So remember, offset is kind of your uniform scale, right? It kind of creates the extrusion, so there's new geometry, but it scales in that extrusion in an even manner, right? So see how it kind of creates this even kind of border boundary. Quite useful for when we turn key faces together off or on. You see how kind of if it's on, it keeps them as one giant extrusion. Off, they're separate extrusions. So there we go. And then I'll do a second extrusion. Bring that back a little bit. There we go. And we've got our drawers, right? Pretty easy. Except what it's doing is, you see how it's kind of creating this weird angle here? And you'll notice if I hold down right mouse button over the object and go to vertex, there's a vertex right here, all right? And there's one on the other side. And this vertex has 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 edges connected to it. 6 edges. This is what we call a 6 star. Now, stars are not polygons, right? With polygons, we know the kind of 3 biggies are triangles, which are polygons with 3 vertices, 3 sides. Quadrangles, or quads for short, which are basically squares and rectangles, right? Polygons with 4, right? Quad is 4. And n-gons, which is any polygon that's got 5 or more vertices. So an n-gon could be a 5-sided polygon, it could be a 10-sided polygon, it could be a 12-sided polygon. Well, we also have stars, right? And stars are basically a vertex with a certain amount of edges coming into them, right? Sometimes you hear them called high valence. That's probably the most technical term for it, right? The high valence kind of vertex is, kind of got a lot of edges going into it. I've heard them called spider webs, lots of different names. A lot of people call them stars. I like calling them stars because, well, they look like stars, right? That looks like a star, right? It's got edges kind of coming out from the vertex. So I like stars, and it's a pretty common term for it. But you might sometimes hear high valence. In fact, Mudbox will literally tell you if you bring in like a cylinder, and that's got a big old 16 star on the top, which for like a cylinder or sphere is pretty natural to have there. So big stars aren't necessarily always a problem, just often a problem. So if it's like naturally on the top of like a cylinder or a sphere, it's fine. Usually that's not an issue to have a star there. Usually though, you have to be a lot more careful. And as we talk and we do more models, we'll talk about it more. But in this case, we have a 6 star here. And once you get into like anything bigger than a 5 star, you can start to get some issues, right? 5 stars and below naturally are in parts of models, right? But once you get up to 6, 7, 10 stars, you're kind of getting into slightly dangerous territory. So it's like an n-gon, right? The more edges going to vertex, the more unpredictable tools will work with it, like the bevel tool, which we're about to show, or it'll be harder to get the kind of shape that you're looking for, or it'll animate in weird ways and pinch too much in a weird way. So we tend to avoid big 6 stars, just like we avoid big n-gons, right? And it's largely for the similar reasons, right? Unpredictability. It's just going to be harder to work with. It's going to behave more unpredictably, and stuff like that. And that's what I'm about to show you here. But that's what a star is. So when you hear people talking about stars, they're not talking about polygons. They're talking about a vertex with edges coming out, right? So you can actually see these videos are a little more concept heavy, right? We're not like doing tons of modeling on this desk, but it is exploring a little bit of new stuff like our snap and stars, right? Even though basically this is just the end table again, right? But it's great practice at those things. But we can also introduce a couple of new things as well. So stars, right? And this is what I want to show you, because this looks fine. It's looking cool. If I go to object mode, it's behaving itself fine, right? But the moment you go in and put bevels on this is going to be a problem. So I'm going to hold down. I've got my cursor over the object, right? I'm going to hold down right mouse button. I'm going to move my cursor up to edge so I can select edges. And remember, by default, your pick marquee is on, right? Not drag. Remember, if you hold down tab, drag selects on, you just move your cursor, and whenever you touch, it selects. And it's kind of a neat, fast way to select precision select some stuff without having to do shift click, shift click, shift click. So it's a fast way to get precision stuff in a certain area without having to be as slow as continually shift clicking. But remember, By default, pick marquees on, and that's the one where it's just a box, right? If I just left click drag, it creates a box. Whatever that box touches or whatever's inside that box gets selected. In this case, I'm going to left click drag a box that incorporates every edge, right? It's big enough to have the whole object inside of it. And that selects every edge. So now I'm going to go to bevel. And there we go. Now, at this point, I'm going to maybe turn my segments down a little bit. And you'll notice one of the things, and actually we'll turn it up a little bit. There we go. That's what we want. It's segments 3, fraction of 2. It's kind of using the default ones last time, but remember fraction control size, segments controls, amount of roundness, right? And we'll do it at 3 here. And I'm going to hit Q. Because remember, this is the bad way, so you should not be following along this. Or you should, if you're going to follow along, save and not save this, right? And that way you can just reopen the saved version that doesn't have this structure. You'll notice what happened here where the 6 star was at, right? That's where the 6 star was at, right? You can still kind of see kind of 6 rows of edges coming out. You notice how when we had 3 segments, it created this 6-sided polygon right here? It's an n-gon. And you notice how it's kind of divoting in a little bit, right? There's actually a little divot there. So if I go to object mode and I just click off, you can kind of see that little divot there. Now, if you're far enough back, you're not really going to be able to tell that much. But, you get closer in and you see that divot. That's not ideal, right? In a pinch, you could probably get away with this, but it's not ideal, right? This is one of the problems with 6 stars. The bigger the star gets, the more it can behave in unpredictable ways. Just like sometimes you can use n-gons like on a wall where you've got booleans and nothing else is going to cause a problem. You can get away with a big star on the top of a cylinder, or bottom of the cylinder, or the tops of spheres. But like on corners like this where you're going to bevel, no. Right? On characters, creatures, you don't want tons of big stars. Stars are like n-gons, right? The bigger the star, just like the bigger the n-gon, the more likely it's going to be harder to work with, harder to get it to work predictably with your tools, or deform predictably, or even just shape predictably. So that's the big thing with stars and n-gons, right? Is the bigger they get, the more unwieldy they are to work with. All right, and they can even do weird shading stuff sometimes. So you can see that's creating this little divot here. So that's just not really the ideal way we want to structure this if we want this bevel to be really, really clean, right? So I'm going to undo some steps to before I even did those extrusions. There we go. So back to about there. Now I'm going to turn isolate select off because this one is actually in a pretty good place, right? Because we've already kind of got it right about where we want it to be. So this edge in itself was fine to put in. Just the extrusions we did after the fact, not cool. Remember, if you hit 3, you can always see if there's any weird stuff or any extra geometry, right? It's kind of one of those things where if you go to multi-cut and you just put it like an edge loop in kind of right here, kind of on top, it's a little harder to do with that guy, but let's say I did an extrusion, right? So I extrude and I don't move it anywhere. You don't think it's extruded, but you hit 3 and you see it is, right? So sometimes just hitting 3, even if you're not planning on working in it, can be great just to see if you accidentally created extra geometry there that you don't want, right? So just remember that can be kind of a cool little test to see what's going on there. All right, so in this case, I'm going to go to multi-cut again. I'm going to put one more kind of edge loop kind of right above it, just to create that actual buffer there, right? There's this actual kind of bit of wood in between these drawers, and this is why I want your drawers to look like this, right? To kind of have these borders, to at least have 2 drawers, so we can actually avoid creating the 6 star and create a good structure for this. And we can kind of put an edge loop up here because that's kind of where the top border's at. And it's multi-cut, right? And I'm holding down control so I can put edge loops in. And then we'll put one kind of down here. Now the last one we really want to do is these kind of borders on the sides, right? So you can see how I'm kind of structuring this to kind of build the boundaries instead, right? We kind of let the extrude build the boundaries last time, and that created that 6 star, which we didn't want. But by spending just a couple of seconds with multi-cut to kind of build in your own boundaries, you're going to be in pretty good shape. Now in this case, we don't probably have to, since the way this lines up and they overlap a little bit there. I'm not going to worry about being super, super precise with those, right? So I can just hold down control to put an edge loop in there, and then kind of one about there. There we go. And you see that kind of gives us this nice structure here. Now I'm going to go back to object mode really quick. And I'm going to turn isolate select on, right? because you can see basically that, in this case, if this side's a little wider, it's okay, because remember, it's kind of, there's a little bit of overlap between the legs in this one. But the biggest thing we wanted to see here was that we've built a structure here that has our drawer pieces that we can extrude in, right? And there's no 6 stars, right? So by actually adding in edge loops to kind of create the borders that are visually there, right? We had a thickened area there, thickened area there. It makes it really easy for us to go to hold down right mouse button, face mode, right? So we hold down right mouse button over the object, face, and I can just click and then shift click, right? Remember, shift adds to selections. And you notice how I've got these two and I can extrude them back without creating a 6 star. So you notice how there's no 6 star here. So by actually just taking a few minutes, not even that, like a few seconds really, to add these edge loops in by hand to create those boundaries, you create a non 6 star structure here that when we extrude back for the drawer cabinets is going to work much better for us. Now I'm going to bevel just to show you how much better this works, but I'm going to undo that bevel because it's a lot easier to build these drawers without the bevel on this yet, right? I tend to wait to do my beveling later in the modeling, right? Unless I really know I'm done with something, or if I need to change shape to it later on, it's still going to be really easy. So in this case, I'm going to hold down right mouse button, go to edge mode, and we're going to talk about how you can selectively bevel some edges later on our next videos later on this project. But for right now, I'm just going to bevel it all because, remember, I'm going to undo it. I just really want to kind of show you how this works. So now if I go to bevel, you'll notice that with those same settings, there's no 6 star there to screw things up. Aha. So you see how this bevel behaves itself really cleanly and really predictably right there? That's why we like to build it this way, why we put in extra edge loops, so we can avoid this 6 star. And so the bevel will work a lot better. Now, another option I want to show you guys, and you can play around with these different metering types to get different results. A lot of them do the same thing, but you can actually play around with how it's going to handle kind of the corners and all that stuff, right? So we can kind of keep trying some different ones. You can also kind of try these as well. So you can always kind of play with these a little bit if you want to, just to kind of see what they kind of do for you and different results. In this case, it's not really doing much different. I find usually the default auto works pretty well, but you can change around some of the ways it's going to handle the bevels or how it's going to make the corners geometry-wise. It's kind of interesting. Usually you're okay with the defaults though, but they are there if you need to play with them. One of the things I want to make sure you saw though is depth, right? Because maybe you've got a desk that the bevels go inward. So depth by the default 1, right, it rounds these corners off this way. And that's usually good. That's usually what you're going to want. But if I go to depth and I type in 0, see how it flattens them? But if I type in -1, you'll see it inverts the bevel, right? So kind of neat, right? And like I said, you can kind of play around with some of these other options here to get different results if you want to. But in this case, you kind of see it's not doing anything radically different with those. But you'll notice that you can actually go in and inverse your depth. Instead of 1, -1, and it pushes the bevel inward. Now for us, we wanted 1. But I want to make sure you guys saw that there are a couple of other options here. And in particular, depth can be neat. You might, depending on the desk you're doing, you might need to do a bevel that goes in instead of kind of rounds out, right? So depth of -1 would do that. So I'm going to undo, because like I said, we don't really want to do that bevel yet, right? Partially just because I'm going to want to later on probably take some edge loops out and do some selective beveling just to make the model more efficient to show you that you guys don't have to bevel every edge on a model. But I really want to make sure you guys saw the structure, the way we wanted to build this. This is kind of really what this video is about, was using multicut to add in edge loops in manually to kind of create these borders, right? Kind of thickened borders. But it helps us avoid the 6 star here. And that's what I really wanted to get you guys to see on this video, was how you can structure this to kind of work that way, right? In this case, I'm going to do a quick bevel on the legs because the legs are pretty much done. So I'm going to hold down right mouse button over the object, over the leg, one of the legs, edge, or you can left click drag, right? And we'll just do a quick bevel. And in this case, remember, you can turn that size down, right? Remember, fraction is the size of your bevel. In this case, I'm thinking maybe 1, because that's a pretty small bevel. So 0.1. There we go. And segments 3 will work pretty well. And then we can kind of get out of that, go to object mode. And there you've got that nice little small round corner on the legs, right? So even when you have It's one of those things that you look at the leg and you think, there's no bevel there. There's always a bevel. If there wasn't a bevel there, even if it's a small one, you would cut yourself. So guys, the whole point of things like the desk and the end table is to bevel stuff, right? Don't forget to bevel stuff. It's in the videos. We've actually done it on the bedpost, right? We did it on the bed railings. We did it on our end table, right? We didn't so much see it in our room, and our lamp didn't really need it either, right? But we're back to kind of our desk where we are going to need that bevel, right? That bevel is what gives you those rounded corners. And they don't have to be huge rounded corners, right? So in this case, I'm probably done up here, so I'll just do a quick bevel up there too. So click on this object, right? Hold down right mouse button, object mode, click on it. Hold down right mouse button, edge, and I can just left click drag. And in this case, because these are really just simple cubes, you really do want to bevel every edge because every edge is going to be rounded. So we'll bevel. And like I said, we can just have a small fraction size, right? In this case, maybe 0.2 for this one because it's probably going to be a little bit of a bigger bevel. So you can kind of see that highlight there. Usually segments of 3 is good, right? Because that gives you a couple of edge loops to make it more nicely rounded and attractive. And we can hit Q to go out. Remember, Q is your quick key for your selection tool, and it's also just a great way to kind of turn off whatever your active tool is. But you see how you can actually see those little glints at the corners? If you actually look at everything, they have that, right? The only thing that's razor sharp is razors, knives, swords. Things have bevels. So I know you're going to look at the picture and go, oh, it didn't have a bevel. It does. It's just small. Make a small bevel. Guys, I'm telling you, don't sit there and go, oh, there's no bevels on stuff. There is. You should be beveling these things, right? All right. So that'd be a great place to stop this video.